The St. Lawrence River Institute Science and Nature Untapped series returns this Wednesday. And joining me now is this month's guest speaker, Barbara King. Welcome to the show, Barbara.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start with a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, I'm the Executive Director of Watersheds Canada. I've been here since, I've been around for the last 20 years working with shoreline property owners and really focused on education on things that we can do to protect our freshwater lakes. Recently went back to school and got my master's in nonprofit management and philanthropy. So kind of learning the business side as well as the science side. So I'm really excited to be sharing with the River Institute tomorrow night.
All right, so now let's talk a little bit, before we get into what you're going to be speaking about on Wednesday, let's talk a little bit more about Watersheds Canada and what it is you do.
Yeah, so we've been around since 2002, and we're an organization that works with shoreline property owners and organizations around freshwater education and stewardship. So we are a national charitable organization. Primarily, we work here in Eastern Ontario on the ground developing programs like our Love Your Lake program, Natural Edge program. So we teach people on actions on what they can do to protect their lakes and rivers. So anything from shoreline landscaping, what native plants they can plant, and have various programs on that you can find it on our website. And then we package those programs and give them to other organizations, and they're delivered across Canada from British Columbia, Saskatchewan, into Ontario. So we build it, test it here, and then share it with other groups.
And now into Cornwall with the Science and Nature Untapped series. So let's talk a little bit about some of the topics that you'll be discussing on Wednesday.
Yeah, so it's actually titled Standing on the Dock in the Rain, because I think that's the best way to kind of look at what's happening on your shoreline property. So you want to look at your development all the way from, your cottage or your house down to the water. So from, things like, rainwater retention to how you're accessing, through stairs and pathways. And things like that. So I literally kind of look at, recommend that you go out in a rainstorm and stand on your dock and see where the water flows. Is it coming overland, directly down into your lake or river, or is it, being captured and, infiltrated and entering kind of the water cycle more naturally? So we'll be talking about, recommendations for types of stairs, docks, decking, and different landscaping things that you can do, and how that impacts water quality and wildlife. So simple tips and recommendations.
And that's certainly pertinent in the area. We certainly do have an abundance of waterfront properties, and that might be something that people don't think about. Maybe going into purchasing something right on the shoreline is a lot of these considerations, right?
Yeah, I think when we interview people, we've done surveys, most people, and if you ask anybody who owns a waterfront property, no matter, what it may look like, their number one value is water quality. They value wildlife, they value, natural shorelines and nature. But we're finding that there's a huge disconnect between people's values and their actions on their property. So, we do unfortunately have a lot of situations where people have things like grass right to the water's edge, where they've stripped, the shoreline of natural vegetation, and kind of looking at that happening incrementally on property after property after property on a lake can have a huge cumulative impact on water quality and wildlife habitat. So most species, aquatic wildlife, over 90% of aquatic life needs a natural shoreline at some point in their life cycle. And looking at these types of developments will have significant impacts over time.
Absolutely, and I think you've touched on it a lot, but let's elaborate a little bit more just on the importance of this topic, because as you just alluded to, all these species that do require it, and especially as waterfronts get more and more developed, their natural space is definitely shrinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And in Ontario in particular, the onus really is on the waterfront property owner as a landowner. We don't have the same regulations that they have in Quebec, generally I should say, that stops you from removing vegetation. So we don't have a lot of those bylaws and regulations. So it's really up to stewardship and education, and for people to kind of take the right steps on their own. So we always talk about picking one access point down to your water. So if you own 200 feet of shoreline, you don't need to get in the water of access to the lake at every point along that shoreline property. So pick your one access point and then leave the rest for nature. So, kind of looking at it, no more than 25% for you and the rest for nature, to kind of find that balance. And you can trim vegetation for views, but it's really critical to the health of our lakes, especially as we're having further impacts, with things like climate change. We're having more extreme weather events and, lower water levels in drought conditions in the summer, high temperatures, invasive species coming in. It's even more critical now to really take action, because we want our lakes to be healthy for our kids and future generations. So.
Absolutely, and just finally, one of the hallmarks, of course, of the Science and Nature Untapped is the interactive portion. You get a chance to, to interact with the attendees. They get to ask questions. So, just talk to me about why that's important to have that one-on-one dialogue with, people that are interested in this topic.
Yeah, I think, it's critical. Like when I bought my first property, it was exactly what you're not supposed to do. So I've spent, the last 15 years restoring my property, and it takes time. So I think a lot of people come into, living along a lake or purchasing a property, and they've inherited a lot of things. So, having that interactive questions and answers and sharing, stories and experiences is really critical to learning and, gaining knowledge and being able to share that with others. So I think these group settings where you can have that interaction is really important.
Absolutely. So it definitely should be an enlightening evening and maybe a little entertaining as well. It always is to learn a little bit more about our great waterfront and how we can be good stewards for that waterfront and the environment. Of course, people can join in through the St. Lawrence River Institute website, or they can watch the rebroadcast right here on your TV on Wednesday at 9 p.m. On that note, Barbara, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much, and I'm looking forward to it. Appreciate it.